A hedge of thorns. Life is not easy, and we all face challenges. We all go through rough seasons in life, but sometimes it just feels like we're stuck, and it feels like we're hedged in on every side. There's there's nowhere to go. Sometimes it feels like we're drowning, and when we're stuck, our first response should always be to go to the Torah to find out what is going on. Why are we going through things? And we all go through things, right? So um, it's just a matter of trying to figure out, is there anything I can be doing? Is there anything I should be working on? Is there anything I need to look at in my life to rectify the situation that we're in? So shalom, welcome to the Aliyah day. Boker Tov. As Rabbi mentioned yesterday, he had another appointment, and so surprise, I'm filling in for him, and it's such a joy and it's such a privilege to be able to study the Torah with y'all this morning, and I'm always grateful for this opportunity. So we're in Parashat. It's a joint Parashat. It's a double portion, Matot-Masei. And we're in the fifth Aliyah of this double portion, which actually begins in the Masei portion of the parasha. But before we get into that, let's say hello and welcome everybody. So I think I'm trying to figure out. It's easier on this side. I have both YouTube and Restream open, so I'm trying to figure out which is the best spot. But Boker Tov Johan from South Africa, welcome. Yitzhak, hello. Well, Boker Tov Peaches, shalom, formerly from Georgia. Shalom Zakin Yigal, Boker Tov Heather Wilson, Boker Tov Leah, welcome. Ariella Rafaela, Boker Tov and Shalom Keturah. Let's see, there's Rebetzi and Boker Tov. Shalom Sergio. Shalom Karen Homan. There's the Rabbi. Boker Tov. Shalom Rabbi. Good to see you. All right. Shalom Micaiah. Shalom Chris and Crystal. Welcome. Good to see you. Shalom Hepzibah. Yeah, sorry, I was a little late today starting up. It's always like some technical issue, even though everything is kind of set up. I couldn't get the correct camera to show up, but anyway, Baruch Hashem, it was fixed. So shalom Brenda, Boker Tov Kim, good to see you. I said Boker Tov Sergio. All right, let's see. Shmuel, top of the morning. D. Greenage, shalom. Shalom, Lisa, welcome. Let's see, who else do we have? Chana Kantu, shalom. Obi-Wan, shalom, Boker Tov. Let's see, I think Elisheva, Boker Tov, good to see you. Thelma, welcome. Grace, welcome. Miriam, Boker Tov. There's Milka, shalom. Zara still asleep. Ona, shalom. Let's see, who else do we have? Jubilee, shalom, welcome. Joseph Johnson, welcome. Alida, also from South Africa, welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, Shmuel. I know, usually, well, at least Rabbi gave everybody the heads up. There is the possibility that there wouldn't be an Aliyah today, so I guess not everybody called the 1-800 number there, but Hulda, shalom. Beard of Prey, Boker Tov. Donna Jones, welcome. Good to see you. Kathy, shalom. And Sarah Merritt, shalom. Hope you and Shane are doing great. All right, so I think that's everybody. I guess, yeah. All right, so Parashat Matot-Masei, double portion. So Masei begins off talking about the journeys. Ele Masei Bnei Israel. These are the journeys of the children of Israel who went forth from the land of Egypt. So, and it goes on to list out 42 different stations, if you will, places that they had to stop at on their journey from Egypt to the promised land. And obviously we know that this journey should have only taken 11 days, and it got stretched out to 40 years because of the hardness of heart, if you will. And you may have heard in the past people talk about how, yes, Israel came out of Egypt, but then it took Hashem 40 years to take the Egypt out of them, right? So there's a lot of significance in each one of these names and places. And I know there's a lot of commentary on that, but we're just gonna just look at the interesting way that the Torah lists out these places. So it's not just a list where it says, okay, they went from here to here to here, but it lists each place out specifically, stating that they came out of the place that they were in and then they had to go to. And so each place, it keeps repeating, they came out of this place and then they went to this place, right? So it's, you know, it's something, I mean, it may be profound, where you think of the statement that you have to leave the place you're at to get to where you're going, right? So I'm being a little facetious, but the fact is that a lot of times when we want to get to a different place in life, we have to leave the place we're at. Boker Tov, Zaykin Rafer, good to see you. And Shalom, Jacqueline. So, you know, we all want to get to the next level, get to higher ground, if you will, get to a better place. We're all on a journey, right? But a lot of times we're maybe kind of stuck where we're at, and it's because we refuse to leave certain elements of the place that we're in right now. So until we leave the place we're in, we can't get to the place we want to go to. And a lot of times it's things that we're holding on to. A lot of times it's things that we should basically get rid of in our lives that we haven't. And that's really what's keeping us from getting to the next level, right? So, you know, Milka and I, we host a high group every other Tuesday. And this week we had a really lively discussion about wealth. I mean, and so what we're doing right now is we're going through the book called Business Secrets from the Bible. It's by Rabbi Daniel Lapid, and it's not just for people who own businesses, but it's for really everybody. It's really principles for work, for success in the world, for whether you're working for someone else or working for yourself. We're all kind of in business because it's all about trading our services or products for another thing of value. And so we're all in business, and there are some really interesting principles that, you know, from the Torah that are brought out in this book. But this week we were talking specifically about the mindset around wealth, the developing that right understanding, the right feeling, if you will, about not just wealth, but also about other people who have wealth. You know, and interestingly, this past Tuesday, that same morning, Rabbi had briefly touched on the topic about this Jewish perspective of wealth and success as well. And so I feel like a lot of us, maybe most of us, have been indoctrinated in this perspective that's kind of negative towards wealth, or more so towards people who have a lot of money or success, and it can be part of our religious upbringing. A lot of times there's a negative stigma placed on that. Now, obviously, we don't, even the Torah exhorts us not to focus all our attention on wealth. So it's not that part that's the negative part, but really a lot of this negativity stems from jealousy or envy, and it's covetousness, right? Wanting what other people have without wanting to do the work to get there. And so, and it's not, I mean, it's not that we're all in a sense lazy, but it's that a lot of times getting to certain levels in life requires certain amount of work or effort, and we're just not, willing to put in that effort. So, I mean, honestly, I am not very good at working out or even inspired, if you will, and it hasn't been that much of a, I guess, I don't have the drive, I think, to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that. But do I want to be healthier and be more fit? Yes, I do. But again, I'm just pointing out something that I know I need to work on, is that I need to be more willing to put in the effort if I want the result, right? So when it comes to wealth, it's not just about money. It's the whole package, especially as Jews. Wealth is a lot more than just money. It's shalom, and shalom involves not just peace, but completeness, wholeness. And it covers every area of our life, spirit, soul, body, mind. Wealth also involves like health, good health, having freedom to do certain things. I was sharing with the group that what I would love to do is just study Torah and spend time with Milka and Zara all day long, just not have to worry about work. But that's obviously not what God created us to do. And so it's all about finding that balance, right? And having the ability to spend time on leisure activities, spend time with family, all of that is part of this bucket of wealth. And so we really need to define what true wealth means to us, right? So it's not what others have. So we need to stop looking at what other people have, and really just look and define, what does wealth need? What would I consider to be truly wealthy? And it's that whole package, not just a dollar amount in the bank. So, and then we need to strive for that. And then obviously go to the Torah to look and see, all right, if I want to get to that level, what do I need to leave? If I want to, again, if you want to go back to exercise or working out as an example, if I'm trying to work out every day or a couple of times a week, what do I need to do? What do I need to give up in terms of time? How do I need to organize my day, my schedule, and really work on that? So I wanted to share, this is what, this is Kol Dodi on the Torah, the commentary. And speaking of these journeys, right? So I know I was rambling a little bit over there, but let's see what the commentary says about that. So it's noteworthy that the Torah does not speak of these journeys as the route to Eretz Yisrael. Rather, it associates them with the road away from Egypt. So like we just said, about it's leaving the place. So this suggests that the Torah views the exodus from Egypt as more than just a process of physical or geographical relocating. Leaving Egypt was a spiritual process which involved weaning the people from the Egyptian manner of thought and instilling them with a commitment to Torah, so that they would never desire to return to Egypt. So that's another level, is that changing our mindset about things, but it's also instilling in ourselves a new understanding of where we need to be, and also ridding ourselves of the desire to go back. You know how many times we've the last couple of parshas we've been reading, how anytime some conflict comes up and someone wants to challenge Moses, the people were like, "Oh, we should have gone back. Oh, we shouldn't have left. We should just, even after the spies came back, yeah, let's just go back to Egypt." Or so there's this desire to return to this level of comfort where everything is just easy, but they're unwilling to move forward and to do or put in the effort to move forward. So we may say further that all the journeys through the wilderness described here represented stages in the spiritual journey from Egypt to Eretz Israel. And in a sense, this spiritual journey did not reach its true goal until the building of the Beit HaMikdash. And it goes on to say, basically, that was completed 480 years after the Exodus from Egypt. And so that was, in a sense, the full process of getting Egypt out of Israel. So it goes on further. So technically, the fifth Aliyah for this double portion begins in verse 50 of Numbers 33. But let's go ahead and read verse 51. So it says, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them," this is Hashem saying, "when you cross the Jordan to the land of Canaan, you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land before you, and you shall destroy all their prostration stones. All their molten images shall you destroy, and all their high places shall you demolish. You shall possess the land, and you shall settle in it. For to you have I given the land to possess it." Excuse me. So the first thing, as part of taking the land, so if we're going to the next level, conquering new land, the first thing is you have to destroy the idols, destroy all the molten images, all these things that are not aligned with Torah. It essentially has to go. So that's really what we need to do to take the land, is we have to destroy all of these things. And it goes on to say you have to drive out the inhabitants of the land. So, we all, at least, okay, I can speak for myself. I would love to have an easy life where Hashem does miracles. If I'm trying, in business, for instance, I would love for people to just call me, clients to call me and say, "Oh, I want your service," or, "I want your product." It's nice for us to imagine that it'd be really nice if basically the money was just raining on us, right? And Hashem works miracles, but we have to do what's called hishtadlut, in Jewish thought. We have to go out and actually fight. And it's and I think that's probably part of what the people of Israel kind of had a hard time, was that they thought they saw the miracles of the plagues and the crossing the Red Sea, the splitting of the sea. So maybe they thought that it would be people would just leave and it'd just be a great land that they can just walk into and take possession of. But the reality is you have to actually fight, and you have to take the ground, you have to take the land. And yes, when you move forward and you go as Hashem tells you, then he's going to go before you. He's going to drive them out, and he's going to work the miracles. Interestingly, this actually, if you look at Exodus, there's a similar passage that Hashem actually refers to. I mean, talks about back then. This is in Exodus 23, verses 29 through 29 onwards. So I'll just read it. So it says, Hashem talking about when they come to the land. Actually, let's start in verse 27. I shall send my fear before you, and I shall confound the entire people among whom you shall come, and I shall make all your enemies turn their back to you. I shall send the hornet swarm before you, and it will drive away the Hivite, the Canaanite, and the Hittite before you. I shall not drive them away from you in a single year, lest the land become desolate and the wildlife of the field multiply against you. Little by little shall I drive them away from you, and until you become fruitful and make the land your heritage. And then, it goes on. Well, the next verse. I shall set your border from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness until the river. For I shall deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hands, and you shall drive them away from before you. You shall not seal a covenant with them or their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they cause you to sin against me, that you will worship their gods, for it will be a trap to you. So, verse 30, well, even 29 and verse 30, Hashem says, I will drive them away. In verse 31, he says, and you shall drive them away. So, the question is, which one is it? Your typical Jewish answer is obviously yes, right? So it's both. You cannot have one without the other. So Rabbi has been talking about being saved by works, and it's like without you actually doing the work, there is no salvation until you actually go forward and drive the inhabitants away. Hashem can't, in a sense, go before us and work, right? So it's a partnership effect. It's a partnership. And also the other thing over here he goes on to say is that he shall not drive them away in a single year. It's little by little, lest the land become desolate. So it's when you take ground, whatever it is, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, it's a process, it's a journey, right? And there are stages, and you don't just get to level 10 from level 1. So it's a slow progress, and interestingly, just even coming to this understanding of Torah-true Judaism in the Messiah, it also wasn't overnight. And I understand that, a lot of people have a hard time with this message because they're, just hearing this coming out of the church or wherever else. And they're, it's a hard message it's a hard pill to swallow when it's almost completely opposite messages. But Hashem works on our hearts slowly, and he takes us through different levels of understanding. It's progressive understanding. But so whatever it is in your life that you're wanting to get to at the next level, just know that it's baby steps. And that's really going back to the whole working out analogy. The best way for me, I guess, would start out with 5 push-ups a day, or just baby steps in the gym, not just go out there and try to like Rabbi bench press 400 pounds or whatever it is, right? So it's slow increments of working our way up, and this is true for whatever the fact is. So let's go back to Numbers 33. And so it's not just about driving out the enemy. He goes on to Hashem goes on to say in verse 55, but if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, those of them whom you leave shall be pins in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and they will harass you upon the land in which you dwell. And it shall be that what I had meant to do to them, yikes, I shall do to you. So the commentaries goes on to say that basically what that last verse means is that because they didn't drive the inhabitants out of the land, eventually they ended up being exiled or driven out of Israel and sent to exile. So this concept of the people who you leave will become pins in your eyes and thorns in your sides. Now, before we go to this concept of thorns, there's a lot of times you can have, in a sense, misplaced compassion, and it's you can apply it to different situations. Sometimes you just have to do what's needed when it comes to, let's say, a case of justice. I was talking to someone recently about, an abusive situation that that their family member has gone through, and it's, oftentimes you'll find that the victim, the abused, is kind of indoctrinated or brainwashed by other groups, and a lot of times people in the church, to say that you're supposed to forgive and be compassionate, or that other person is, making teshuvah. But the fact of the matter is, a crime was committed and there are consequences according to the law. So you cannot have misplaced compassion in that situation when you have to have justice, right? Now, is there room for forgiveness? If there's true teshuvah, sure, there's room for forgiveness, but that doesn't mean that you don't have the consequences, right? So we got to be careful when Hashem tells us to, in a sense, take the land and drive out the enemy. We have to have that decisive action. We can't, in a sense, be kind of soft about it and oh, it's okay to have this thing in my life, or be, it's just a small thing, whatever. You have to, in a sense, cut it out, right? So talking about thorns, there's a story that Rabbi shared before about the burial procession of Jacob. And basically, from Egypt, this huge procession went back to the promised land, back to Israel, and they were going to bury Jacob. And what ended up happening is all the kings of the land and everybody that saw this procession saw that Joseph had put his crown on the coffin of Jacob, and eventually all the kings placed their crowns around the coffin to where let me just read this commentary. It was called Goren Ha'atad, the field of thorns, and this is from Genesis, Bereshit 50, verse 10. So this procession, they came to Goren Ha'atad, which is across the Jordan, and there they held a very great and imposing eulogy. And the commentary talks about this name Atad is symbolic. Rashi, citing the Talmud, explains that it was given this name because of the event which took place there. All the kings of Canaan and the princes of Ishmael came there to wage war, but when they saw Joseph's crown hanging upon Jacob's coffin, they desisted and hung their crowns on it also, surrounding it with crowns just like a field, which is encircled with a protective hedge of thorns. And then, it goes on to how it says there were 36 crowns But anyway, and the crowns which the kings of the nations now and then offer to the Jews in a burst of magnanimity are alas covered with thorns as well. So this concept of Goren Hata, this field, it's really a threshing floor, is this analogy of what it looked like. It's this threshing floor that was surrounded by thorns. So in a sense, what Hashem is doing is, if you're not going to, in a sense, follow his Torah, drive out all the paganism, if you will, in your life, then it's going to get a little uncomfortable, because you're going to be put in a sense, in a threshing floor. And not just are you going to get threshed, you're going to be surrounded in this field surrounded by hedges of thorns. And really, it's all to bring you back to the truth, bring you back to Torah, to Teshuvah. And and I didn't mark this spot, but I know in Hosea, God talks about a similar situation where he's talking about Israel, right, where they've been unfaithful. And he says that in Hosea 2 verse 8, therefore I'll hedge your way with thorns, and I'll hem her in with a fence, talking about Israel, and she will not find her paths. So basically, he's going to hedge you in with thorns when we go astray. Now, I'm not saying that if you're going through a hard time, if you're going through, in a sense, a really trying situation, I'm not saying that every situation is Hashem, is because of sin or because of anything like that. So I'm not saying this is every situation, but it is very important for us to kind of examine ourselves and see, this is the principle where if we want shalom in the land, we need to make sure that the enemies are driven out. So this is where we need to examine ourselves and kind of look internally and see, am I allowing some pagan nation to kind of reside in this area of my life, right? What is it that I need to cut out, or what do I need to do to break out of this hedge and move forward, or go to the next level, go to the next place that Hashem has appointed for me. So in Proverbs, so Rabbeinu Bachya talks a little bit, it's his commentary on Exodus 25, but he quotes Proverbs 8 verse 10, and then he goes on to quote a couple of other verses in the Proverbs, basically talking about, well, let me just go ahead and read it. Proverbs 24 verses 30 onwards. So, I passed by the field of a lazy man, and by the vineyard of a man lacking an understanding heart. And behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. Nettles had covered its surface, and its stone wall was broken down. When I saw this, I set my heart to understand. I saw and accepted discipline. And this word for discipline is the word musar. Ra'iti lechachti musar. And so Rabbeinu Bachya also quotes Proverbs 8:10, accept my discipline instead of silver, accept knowledge instead of gold. And I think Rabbi, maybe it was yesterday, he talked about this word discipline that, that everybody is kind of afraid of, or, we don't want discipline, but really it's this concept of refining. It's musar. It's improving our character. And that is really what discipline is. And this, I'm not going to read the whole commentary, but he also quotes Proverbs 13:4, "The soul of the lazy man desires, but has nothing." So again, I'm not saying if you're going through a hard time, you're lazy. That's not what I'm saying. But this is twofold. If you're kind of comfortable where you're at, it's not hard, but you want to get to the next level, then you need to put in that effort, right? So what Solomon means is that if someone desires something and comes to the conclusion that he does not lack anything worth desiring, this is proof that he is lazy. Had he made a serious effort to find things which need improving, he would have found such matters. So basically, it's don't be complacent. Don't think that, I'm good. There's nothing that needs improving in my life. And that, in a sense, is a lazy attitude, regardless of whether you're having a good season or a rough season. And another example that he gives is that it's someone looking to do charity, tzedakah, but not finding a person in need of charity. It's clearly, if you really wanted to give tzedakah, you can find someone to give tzedakah to. Our sages in Megillah 6 says that if a person says to you, "I have tried but could not find," do not believe him. If he said, "I did not try but I did find," do not believe him. Do not believe him either. If, however, he says, "I have tried to find and succeeded in finding," do believe him. So, and he goes on to talk about this hedge of thorns. Basically, a lazy man has prevented himself from making progress by his very laziness. Instead of progressing morally and ethically, he regresses using his lethargic manner to prevent him from accomplishing anything. Now, again, this is applicable to, in a sense, every area of our life. So it's, if you're doing well financially, then look at your spiritual life. Are you kind of being lazy in Torah study, or the other way around? Or if it's your emotional state, are you anxious, depressed, or whatever it is, worried about things all the time? Is there, what is it that we can kind of make progress in our musar, where can we make progress in our musar, and in which area of our life, right? So I want to kind of end with going back to Hosea. So because that whole portion kind of seems a little harsh, and it's Hashem saying, you've turned away from my Torah, you've gone away, you've strayed from my precepts, and so this is what's going to happen. These are all the consequences. In a sense, it's not necessarily punishment, but it's us running away from his protection, and in a sense running into the field with thorns. And so, but even before we turn around, Hashem says in verse 16, Hosea 2:16, "Therefore, behold, I will seduce her, and I will lead her to the desert, and I will speak to her heart. I will give to her vineyards from there, and make the valley of Achor, which is troubling, into a portal of hope. She will dwell there as in the days of her youth, and as on the day of her ascent from the land of Egypt. And it shall be on that day, the word of Hashem, that you will call me Ishi, which is my husband, and you will no longer call me my master. I will remove the names of the false gods, Baalim, from her mouth, and they will not be mentioned again. I will seal a covenant for them on that day with the beasts of the field and birds of the heaven, and the creeping thing of the ground. I will banish bow and sword and warfare from the land, and I will lay them down in safety. And this is where this is the verse that we all the men say when we wrap tefillin in the morning. I will betroth you to me forever, and I will betroth you to me with righteousness, with justice, with kindness, and with mercy. And I will betroth you to me with fidelity, and you will know Hashem. Such a beautiful passage. And this word for fidelity, it's Hashem talking to us. I will betroth you with fidelity. This word is emunah. Varastik li be'emunah v'yidat et Adoshem. So he's gonna have emunah towards us. And this is where, again, Rabbi has touched on this a lot. This whole concept of faith is completely skewed, because really the Torah understanding of true faith, of belief in Hashem, is faithfulness, is fidelity. That is truly what emunah is. It's fidelity to the Torah, and at the same time Hashem is going to be faithful to us even when we're unfaithful. When we go away, he's going to take us into sometimes a period where it seems like we're surrounded by thorn bushes, we're hedged in, but then he's going to draw us back to him, and he's going to call us back and establish his covenant with us again and be faithful to us. So that is the beauty of Hashem and his Torah, and this is truly the grace in the Torah. And no matter what we're going through, let us really take time to kind of just look inside internally, examine ourselves. We kind of ended our high group talking about taking time in silence. We're living in a time, in an age where there's just so many distractions. Our phones are always in front of us. They're always dinging, giving us notifications, emails, messages, social media. There's just a lot of noise, and it's really important for us to just take time, if possible, once a week. More would be better, but at least once a week, take 5, 10, 15 minutes of just sitting in silence without any technology, and you're not really even praying, but just sit in silence and, in a sense, listening. And also take time to kind of just think about where you're at. What do you need to leave behind? What do you need to drive out? What do you need to cut out of your life right now so that you can get to the next place that Hashem has in store for you? He's already given you the land, but it's up to you to take the land. He's going to go before us, but it's up to us to move forward and drive out the inhabitants. He's going to do the miraculous and drive them out, but it's not going to happen until we move forward, until we actually go ahead and fight and drive out what's holding us back, and drive out what is keeping us down, hedged in, and not able to move forward and succeed in all that we do. So, end of our Aliyah. It was such a joy to join y'all this morning. What a privilege to be able to study the Torah together. And B'ezrat Hashem, Rabbi will be back tomorrow morning, and it's going to be awesome. It's prep day. We're coming up on to Rosh Chodesh, this Shabbat, and that's obviously not a Shabbat, but we're going to be intensifying our mourning. But like Rabbi has been saying, take time to really think about, what is it that, again, examining ourselves, what is it that's in us or that we're doing that's keeping the third temple and Mashiach from being established, right? And his kingdom being established. So let's really yearn for the temple again and for his kingdom, because again, that was really the final stage, the final place that Hashem was taking us to out of Egypt. So subscribe to this channel if you haven't, like this video, share this video with your family and friends and this channel as well. And let's get this message out to as many people as possible. The true gospel of Yeshua Mashiach with the right understanding of Hashem's covenant, of his Torah. And also, if you've been blessed by this ministry and have your life changed, we would love your prayers and your support. And we can't do this without you. So have a great day. Shalom Aleichem, and be blessed.